the world's largest asset managers just doubled down on Bitcoin. BlackRock's chief investment officer says Bitcoin is ultimately going considerably higher, even after recent market volatility. Meanwhile, money is flowing into tokenized assets. Solana is seeing record activity, XRP is expanding its global footprint, and Bittensor just exploded higher after a major institutional narrative shift. Today, we are breaking down what matters, what doesn't, and where smart money appears to be positioning next. Welcome back to Real Market Maverick. Let's get into it. BlackRock's chief investment officer, Rick Ryder, recently made his view clear. Despite short-term volatility, he believes Bitcoin is headed much higher over the long term. Now, that's significant because BlackRock isn't just another market commentator. This is the largest asset manager in the world, overseeing more than $12 trillion in assets. When firms of this size talk about Bitcoin, institutions pay attention. However, Ryder also acknowledged why Bitcoin has been struggling recently.
One of your mutual funds, I believe, still owns a little bit of Bitcoin. And you were one of the early people inside BlackRock to get into it. It's now sold off 50%. Is it a buy now, or are you going to wait more?
Wow, these are specific questions. So, listen, I think it's ultimately going considerably higher. I think the technicals, there's some technical condition around it that causes it to chop around. I think it's ultimately going higher. We're keeping it a pretty moderate exposure, quite frankly, because I think there's some other things that we talked about in technology and some of the growth engines. By the way, there are places to get yield and things like some parts of the credit markets, EM, that I felt like it's just okay today, and so we've reduced exposure. Ultimately, I think it's going higher.
Japan's central bank raised interest rates to their highest level in decades as policymakers continue fighting inflation. Higher rates generally pull liquidity out of the financial markets. And when liquidity tightens, speculative assets like Bitcoin often face short-term pressure. In simple terms, investors suddenly have more places to earn yield without taking crypto risk. That's creating temporary headwinds, but BlackRock's long-term view hasn't changed, and actions speak louder than words. The company continues building Bitcoin-related investment products, creating additional pathways for institutional capital to enter the market. The more investment vehicles available, the easier it becomes for traditional investors to gain exposure to Bitcoin without direct buying and holding it themselves. That's how adoption scales, not through hype, but through infrastructure. While crypto markets have been shopping sideways, institutional capital continues searching for growth. Recent market moves remind us of a simple truth. Liquidity drives everything. When central banks tighten financial conditions, risk assets often struggle. When liquidity expands, risk assets tend to thrive. That's why every serious investor should monitor interest rates, central bank policy, and credit conditions, not just crypto headlines. Bitcoin remains highly sensitive to global liquidity cycles, and if those conditions eventually loosen again, Bitcoin could benefit significantly. Let's talk XRP. Ripple continues expanding beyond speculation and into real-world financial infrastructure. Recent reports indicate Ripple has increased its exposure to the African fintech market through investment activity tied to Flutterwave, one of Africa's largest financial technology companies. Why does this matter? Because Africa remains one of the fastest growing digital payment markets in the world. Cross-border payments, remittances, and financial inclusion are massive opportunities. The broader takeaway isn't just XRP. Is that major crypto companies continue investing during periods when retail attention is relatively low. Historically, some of the most important partnerships and acquisitions happen during quieter market phases. One of the strong trends in crypto right now is tokenization, and Solana is emerging as a major beneficiary. Tokenized equities trading volume recently reached new highs as investors increasingly seek blockchain-based access to traditional financial assets. Think about what's happening. Instead of choosing between traditional finance and decentralized finance, investors are beginning to combine both worlds. Stocks, crypto, real-world assets, all becoming accessible through blockchain rails. That's a powerful trend, and Solana continues positioning itself as one of the leading networks benefiting from this shift. The growth in tokenized assets could become one of the biggest adoption stories of this cycle. Another interesting development is where trading activity is concentrating. Large exchanges continue seeing substantial demand for products tied to major institutional narratives. Whether it's Bitcoin, tokenized assets, or emerging financial products, Users are actively looking for exposure through crypto native platforms. This is important because it demonstrates that blockchain infrastructure is increasingly becoming a gateway into broader financial markets. The lines between traditional finance and crypto continue to blur, and that's exactly what many industry leaders have been predicting for years. Now, let's discuss one of the most interesting sectors in crypto today: decentralized artificial intelligence. Bittensor, also known as TAO, recently experienced a major rally after renewed attention from institutional research firms. The thesis is straightforward. As governments increase scrutiny over centralized AI systems, decentralized alternatives become more attractive. Instead of relying on a single company to control access to AI models, decentralized networks distribute participation across global contributors. Whether this thesis ultimately wins remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: institutional investors are paying attention, and whenever institutions begin discussing a narrative, markets tend to notice. That's exactly what we've seen with TAO's recent price action. Before we wrap up, here is what our Market Maverick scanner flagged this morning. Our system is currently monitoring over 500 cryptocurrencies, 26 stocks, and 29 forex pairs in real time. A few developments standing out today. Strategy's latest Bitcoin-related investment product is facing investor pressure. Hyperliquid open interest has surged more than 30% in the last week, showing growing trader participation. And lawmakers continue debating the regulatory framework surrounding stablecoins and digital assets. As always, we are watching these developments closely and will alert the community if meaningful opportunities emerge. The big picture remains the same. BlackRock remains bullish on Bitcoin. Institutional infrastructure continues expanding. Tokenization is accelerating. Solana is benefiting. Ripple is growing its global footprint. And decentralized AI is becoming a serious investment narrative. Short-term volatility will continue, but beneath the surface, the foundations for broader adoption are still being built.